5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Today's title. Oh, it disappeared. That's great. It's out there. The title's there, though. You saw what the title is. The title was Heart versus Chin, right?
Heart versus Chin. You
What's the
can't
one
win
thing
without,
you need?
yeah.
What's the one thing you need to win a fight? The number one
Is
thing.
it heart or chin? Is it heart or chin?
Chin. Which one is it?
What is
And then John's got plenty of stories because he's been there. He's been there for people that have gotten into street fights. He's also been in there at the UFC watching guys compete to get into the UFC, outside of the UFC, not even in the UFC, people who want to fight in the UFC. I'm sure you have hundreds of guys coming to your gym every day saying, I want to fight in the UFC. And you try your damnedest to try to get them in there, but there's something missing sometimes, right? There's something missing. There's certain things that even the professionals can't train. John's going to break that down for you.
Yeah. It's sad because some people appear to want it the most, but without this one thing, I look at them and I just there's a lot of things I could look at. Like they might be slow, they might be, they might not be powerful. Maybe they don't even have a great chin. There's a lot of things. But this one, when I see this one, I know without a doubt that person is not going to make it to the highest level. They're not going to survive, a war, a battle, a real fight. I mean, they could, they might, if they're super, super, super skilled, talent-wise, speed-wise or something, they could fake it for a long time. They could get by on their speed. They could get by on their skill. They might get by on their power. But if you don't have the missing ingredient, heart, and now I'm not talking about cardio heart, like running out of gas. That's cardio. There's a big difference between, even though cardio actually means heart, but when I say cardio, I mean conditioning. I mean stamina, right? I mean anabolic, threshold training. That's to me what I'm considering cardio. Heart. Anytime I say heart, I mean courage. Courage. That's what I mean when I say heart. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, some guys, if their family was attacked, they might show courage, but they won't in the cage. And I think about that a lot because I want to say, well, it doesn't. Not everybody's built to be a fighter, and that's true. But like the UFC or sport fighting, it just puts it all up there, and everything's exposed. Everything, your takedown defense or lack thereof it used to be exposed when the UFC first came around. Your lack of a chin because you've only been grappling, you've never been hit before. That has been exposed. So many things have been exposed in sport fighting, especially MMA, that it's hard to fool anything anymore. Yeah, I mean, you can fool some of the people some of the time, and you can fool some of the people all the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool the fucking UFC fans if the guy doesn't have heart. I remember sitting there watching an Ultimate Fighter match that one of my guys was in. He wasn't my guy really, but he was my guy on the Ultimate Fighter, right? I was coaching his side, and he tried to quit in the corner, and I was trying to yell at him and explain to him, you'll regret this for the rest of your life. You'll always, every time you're hanging out with your grandkids or thinking about this in 40 years, you'll always, I didn't say all this because I'm just thinking it now, but I did say, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. And we realized he just didn't have the heart to be a fighter. He did not want to, when he started feeling a little pain, he wanted to stay on the stool, and the referee, great referee, came up to me, Herb Dean, and he said, John, if your guy doesn't want to fight, you can't make him fight. And I was like, fuck. So Chuck was, he was Chuck's name was on that team, and he was so pissed. And I mean, it's hard to watch that because this guy must have been so skilled he made it all the way to the Ultimate Fighter. His lack of heart has never had to come out before. That means he was so good, he never had to dig in deep. Chuck has, Glover has. Oh shit. We know Glover has heart, right? But some guys are so skilled, you don't see that. And some guys you don't see it at all because they're just so good. You don't see it at all until they get pushed. And all of a sudden their skill is overrun by being pushed. And then their lack of heart will always show. If you don't have heart, you'll never have heart. You'll never train your heart. You just will never have it. You can't train heart. As world famous, probably the best amateur boxer ever to come out of the United States, Howard Davis. We used to train fighters together, and we used to agree. That's one thing we agreed on. And he would just say, "Can't train heart," and so that's where this comes in. What do you think? Anybody say anything?
Well, Zen Baron says, hello. Is spitting on someone's face eye a good self-defense method if they're about to get close to your face?
No, it's not. I don't know what that would do. I mean, the best thing it would do is like if you have HIV or something, get in his eyes. I mean, it might kill him 12 years later, but it's not going to defend that attack. I'll tell you that.
I don't even know if that would give him HIV. I don't even want to get into what would. So
Anyway, I guess we have no question on that one.
I guess we're gonna say we don't have any questions related to heart or chin. But here's a question. I'm still, by the way, for anybody watching, and I seem aloof in the first 5 minutes of sharing on social media for this thing. I guess my question would be then, if you have a guy, like you said, going back to your UFC story about who was that guy? Do you remember his name?
I don't know. That's the reason I'm not putting it up is because I don't want to drag him through the mud.
You want to drag him through the mud? Okay.
That was actually on.
And then
that was actually on the show.
Did that person end up moving on to get into the UFC or no?
You know what the weird thing is? He got dropped from that show, but I heard later, and I've never seen him fight, but I heard later he tried again and a different avenue, and this time he made it back to the UFC. I don't know how, but yeah, I guess he had a lot of skill, and I don't hear about him now. Maybe he made it and then he got, he didn't make it all the way, obviously, but I think like 5 or 6 years ago he made it back in the UFC for a couple fights. But yeah, I don't actually remember his name, but It came out on somebody brought that clip because it was in Ultimate Fighter. Someone sent me that clip and I thought it was funny.
So again, the person did end up moving on to the UFC. Were they successful in the UFC is a total different question. Now, you say you can't train heart or courage. So the idea that someone wants to give up when things get hard, right? Is that kind of the idea of wanting to give up when things get hard?
No, they do give up because everybody wants to give up. They just don't.
They do give up. They do give up when things get hard.
Yeah.
And there's no training that.
No training that.
These are the same people who hit the wall in marathons because they go too hard in the beginning and they just hit, they
Well, there's two ways to go about it. I mean, like if somebody doesn't have a chin, he can have the biggest heart in the world and then get knocked out. Right? He could have the biggest heart in the world, but not have a chin. Those two are completely not related. So hitting the wall, since I've run a couple marathons, and right around mile 17 or 18, or I forget what they're supposed to go. I think around 16 or 17, I hit a wall. And but I finished the marathon, but I could see where if physically you can't, then that has nothing to do with heart, right? Like if you run out of gas 100%, and you just can't even punch anymore because your gas tank's empty. Once it's empty, it's empty. You can't just come up with oxygen if it's not in your cell. You know what I mean? Your mitochondria is not going to work. That has nothing to do with heart. It's being able to go on physically, but not going on mentally, right? So if you can go on physically, if you dug in, but you refuse to, because mentally you're weak, or you have no heart, there's a huge difference there. Heart and chin and heart and conditioning, both they're related because they look the same when you see the presentation. Like you might see a guy exhausted, and then you might think, oh, that guy has no heart, but he might be actually exhausted to where he has no oxygen. All he has is lactic acid. So that's not on him. Well, it is. He should have trained harder, but that has nothing to do with his heart. That means he physically, like if a car runs out of gas, it doesn't mean it's a shitty car. It means it needs gas. So there's that. And then if a guy doesn't have a chin, every time he gets tagged there, his body shuts off. That's not him. He can have the biggest heart in the world, but once best light in the world, but once you turn the switch off, the light's going off. So that's what happens to that. So no heart means you can physically do it. You just not going to do it mentally. That's when your heart comes into play. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's what'll separate a true martial artist with Bushido and someone that's a partial artist.
So, Zen Baron says it wasn't a joke. I just thought it might blind the attacker if you do that. We understand. We get it. We get it. We get it. You got your answer though. Don't. There's other things you could do that would be more effective. So going back to what you said though, it's because they're giving up, and I think I've seen this and then I don't know if this is more from a teaching perspective, a coaching perspective. I've had it happen where a student says they don't want to participate in something. For example, I had this happen a few weeks ago. They were doing the sumo sparring. You know how you have your sumo sparring.
Yeah.
In your class. So I had the kids doing sumo sparring, and one of the kids that's coming from a different background. So I'm trying to keep things anonymous, as just in case the parents are listening. I'm not trying to single anyone out. One of the kids didn't want to participate in the sumo sparring because they come from a different martial art background and they didn't feel comfortable with sumo sparring. They prefer to do kickboxing. And I said, well, right now we're doing sumo sparring. That's what everyone's doing. It's not, it doesn't matter. It's not a competition, not win or lose. But they refused to do it. They said, nope, I don't want to. And they just didn't want to. And there was nothing I could do to get them to participate, no matter what I said.
How old are they?
They're kids, 8. They're 8 years old.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I don't know about heart, but that's basically refusing to participate in the class. I think that would definitely impinge on their belt, getting their next belt, or if they're not going to do stuff in class. Maybe there's a reason. I would talk to their parents.
yeah,
Maybe there's a reason they can't do it, but I can't think of a good one.
yeah. No, I talked to the parents. And again, I'm not going to drag a bunch of private stuff into a public discussion. And there was a reason behind it that was not related to martial art. But in that situation, when those kind of things happen, and we were just talking about a kid, but that happens with adults too sometimes, right? You'll have an adult come in and they just feel that they just don't want to. And I talk like you said, it's gonna. And that was one of the things I came. I said, if you there's not, I can't force you to participate, right?
No,
I can't
but
physically grab you, like you said, you were saying earlier, in that same situation with the UFC guy. You can't grab him like a child. I mean, they were a child. I'm not going to go as far as picking someone up and putting him in the ring if
no, but
there's.
I'm not gonna. But you can hold their belt. You can
Yeah,
hold
I
their
can hold their
belt.
belt. That's what I told him. That hey, if you're not going to participate, you're going to be wherever you're at for a very long time until you decide to take that. That's your decision. But in this situation, like I've dealt with adults that just don't want to, for example, oh yeah, this happens a lot. And what do you do in this situation when you have an adult who does not want to do grappling? They only want to do striking. And whenever you say, hey, today we're doing a grappling drill, they say, I don't want to do that. I want to do grappling. How do you handle that kind of situation? I don't
Well,
know if is that hard?
so we have 4 parts. We have 4 parts of our martial art. So like if they don't want to do conditioning, they're not going to promote. If they don't want to do striking, they're not going to promote. If they're not going to do wrestling, they're not going to promote. Or if they're not going to do grappling, they're all equal parts of like if you're math class and you go, no, I'm not going to do any subtraction. I'll do addition, but I'm not going to do subtraction. They're not going to pass, right? So they're not going to pass, basically. That's the same thing.
So
if they don't want to grapple for fun, they don't have to do that ever. Our grappling, street grappling only. So they don't go to the sport grappling side. But if it's street grappling time and they don't want to do it, they're not going to promote.
Yeah. So there's no way to train that. So then let's turn the conversation a little bit. We talked about what's one thing you can't train. Well, what's one thing you do like to try? Like you have someone who, for example, doesn't want to participate in a certain activity. Let's say it's conditioning. Let's say their conditioning sucks and they have like a fear of conditioning. How do you try to get them to break that? I mean, you can hold them back. You can say, I'm going to hold you back. What are some of the things that you try to do to encourage them? I know you can't build hard. There's some people that are going to give up. But how do you at least try to get people? Because there's some people that will give up no matter what, but there's some people that need a little bit of a push. How do you push them? How do you get them to
need conditioning? Conditioning?
That's just an example. We'll use conditioning as an example.
Yeah, because there are conditioning is a big part of our belt testing. So if they don't do the conditioning, they will never promote. So if that doesn't encourage them, then they can, I mean, they want to pay me and never promote. Okay. They'll never promote. Simply put, they'll never promote. Promoting is attendance, number 1, attitude, number 2, conditioning is number 3. So if they don't have the attitude, they'll never promote. If they don't have attendance, they can only have 2 misses. They'll never promote. And if they don't have, the conditioning, that's the third thing. Then comes skill and techniques, number 4. So they just won't promote. Thing.
Okay, so they wouldn't promote, and that
Never.
No, they never promote. Yeah, they'll never promote. And that, but do you find have you found that to be effective? Then have you seen people be like, "Oh, my conditioning sucks." They don't promote, and then they make the turnaround. They come back and they start doing better.
If they do the conditioning or not?
Yeah. Have you seen have you seen people who are aversive to, let's say, conditioning, or let's say one part of your program, and you tell them, hey, you're not going to promote? Have you seen people make a turnaround? Have you seen people actually?
No, I mean, not to be honest, not really that many, because people come here knowing what to expect for the most part. So it's kind of weird if they all of a sudden don't want to do conditioning. We're known for that. Joe Rogan talks about that on his podcast. So if somebody comes to our gym, they know expect conditioning, and so if they're not going to do it, I don't know, they're going to turn around and do it. I don't know, maybe, but if they turn around and do it, then more power to them. But if they won't do the grappling or the striking or the conditioning, they're just not going to promote. It's like, they could audit my classes and pay me, but they're not going to promote ever. So it's kind of it's a must have.
All right. Well, so far we don't have any more questions.
We don't? Okay.
Oh,
That's
wait,
good.
wait. One person says, let's see. Oh, okay. Well, we have a few comments. Rolo says greetings from Paso Robles. General George Patton said that. I guess you must have said something from General. I don't know. And Robert Essel says wrestling builds heart. I've seen it firsthand. Wouldn't you agree sparring is conditioning and really the best kind? Oh, there we go. Would you say that sparring is conditioning or the best kind of conditioning?
No, it's not. You're gonna. I mean, it is a way to condition, but if you rely on sparring for your conditioning, you're going to be injured and punch drunk. If you rely on rolling for your conditioning, you're going to always have dislocated shoulders and knees, and you're gonna get injured a lot. You cannot rely on conditioning for your main source, or you cannot rely on sparring or rolling as your main source of conditioning, because you'll just get hurt all the time. If you spar that hard enough to stay in shape, you'll always be hurt, or you'll be punchy before too long. So no, it's a terrible way to get in shape. Nobody does that. Well, I'm not gonna say nobody, but nobody successful does that. I mean, look at Ali. Ali spent hours just in the ring shadowboxing. He spent hours on the road running miles and miles, push-ups, calisthenics. All the old school boxers, their main source of conditioning or cardio was running long distance. Now it's more sprinting involved, but there's still sprinting and high intensity interval training, anaerobic and anaerobic workout. Sparring is for timing and distance. It's never to be used for conditioning.
And then Rolo says, "Oh, fatigue makes cowards of us all." General Patton. All right, thank you for clearing that up, Rolo. William John asks, "How often do you recommend sparring and rolling?"
Let me go back to this thing. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. It sounds good, because once you start getting tired, you're going to get beat up more, but you could be the toughest guy in the world. Your coward doesn't even fit in anywhere when your description. But if you're if you're physically fatigued, then you just have nothing to give. Because like I said, that's like saying that fucking Ferrari is a terrible car because it's out of gas, it's not going very fast. If the person doesn't have, if he's out of gas, completely fatigued, so fatigue makes you not be able to defend yourself or throw offense, but it doesn't make you a coward. A coward makes a coward of you, right? So it's a little different. What else was the other question?
The next question was, "How often do you recommend sparring and rolling?"
It depends on if you have a fight coming up, or if you're just doing it for the street, then I don't know. Sparring is so it's on the spectrum, because it goes from tapping to shadow box sparring to barely touching a little more. I have different names for the sparring, but to do full on sparring, I'd say maybe 5 minutes every 6 months altogether. I don't know. We never spar all out. That's what I mean. But twice a week for like half an hour each. So an hour a week, we spend drilling and pseudo sparring and mock sparring and light sparring. So we do that for about an hour a week. But for hard sparring like we used to do, maybe we've done it now. Not even 5 minutes. I'll say maybe a couple minutes every year or so. We just don't do it. It's not part of our curriculum or our training regimen anymore.
So I guess really what you're doing though is you're making a distinction between hard sparring and light sparring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's break this down a little more. So hard sparring, once that, and again, I think this can easily your requirement, not even a requirement, because you said it's not a requirement anymore. Um, I know, that a lot of people have this impression of Muay Thai kickboxers as being these badasses that beat the shit out of each other all the time, which is pretty true. But in training, it's super light contact. The reason that super light contact is because most Muay Thai fighters fight every month in Thailand because that's how they're trying to make their bills. They fight way too much, in my opinion. But that's where they're getting their hard sparring or fighting because they're actually fighting and they're getting paid. But outside of that, they're just doing light contact sparring.
Yeah, but when they're doing that, when the fight isn't getting them conditioning, because what if all their fights are first round knockout, and you can't do conditioning once a month. I mean, that's impossible. Like imagine if you're a marathon runner, you ran once a month.
Yeah.
So
well, this has to do with the other question though. How often do you recommend sparring and rolling? This is separate from the other question.
Yeah.
So like to kind of break down his question a little more, we're making a distinction between light and hard, saying that hard, I mean, if you're going to compete, save it for the competition. In training, you should only be doing light. I mean,
lights. I don't use the word light because they're going all out. They're just not. I mean, I'm very specific on the different kind of sparring, and really none of it involves full head contact. We do a lot of jab sparring where they touch the face a lot, and there is some minimal other sparring where they can hit the face, but I give it all percentages. And if I see somebody going too hard, they'll know it real quick. I'll let them know. And then they dig to the body. They can dig to the body. They can kick, they punch. So there's a lot of roughness, and then there's a lot of grappling, a lot of but it's just not the getting punched in the head or freestyle doing takedowns, right? Because that's where most knee injuries happen, or freestyle rolling, because that's when most shoulder and elbow injuries happen, and neck. So that's where I do all the control, but they still do it hard and rough, and we drill. And one thing we do is in between our drills, whether it's grappling drills or sparring drills, there's explosive short bursts of like 8 counts or burpees or something that gets them exhausted, or punch in a sprawl, or just takedowns back and forth till they're exhausted. Then I make them do some light sparring, and they're exhausted going in. So they're getting used to being exhausted while they're fighting, but you don't get used to being punched in the face. I want to tell everybody out there, just like if you're a cop, you don't get used to getting shot in the chest. You're not going to get used to that. And if you're a knife fighter, you don't get used to being cut in the carotids or something. You don't. That's going to happen, but you're not going to get used to it. So don't fucking train with it. And the same holds true for heavy head contact in sparring.
So just to answer that question then, like, you don't like to use the word light. Sparring drills, we'll call it.
Yeah.
Sparring drills, stand-up sparring drills twice a week, 3 times a week.
Twice a week.
Focused grappling, rolling twice a week.
It's never single. It's not alone, because the fight's always going to start standing. So sometimes the fight will go, my drill will go, combination and a shot, get the mount, and then go. And then they roll for, whatever time or whatever time I prescribe, and boom, they start back standing again, then combination, whatever for the takedown, and then they start on the ground. So on grappling days, sometimes they just go in and roll, but that's a drilling and rolling grappling. That's usually twice a week as well.
Okay, so there you go. So for
my fight team, but you gotta realize this is for my fight team. So these are for the people this is the sport. So they're rolling on the ground. When they're rolling, they're not rolling with gouging and rough, that kind of stuff in mind. They're rolling for a sport. So it's a different kind of rolling, and so it's a different kind of training. So they need to put in the time and the they got to put in the repetitions and of the drilling on the ground so it's a whole different training session. My Hawaiian Kempo guys, they do both twice a week. So they train Monday and Wednesday, and then on that Wednesday is their the drilling is different on Monday, but the real drilling is so it's once a week. It's every Wednesday.
All right. So William John, there's more distinctions to be made. If you're training for a sport like MMA, if you're sport fighting, twice a week for the stand-up sparring drills that are mixed in with grappling drills, and twice a week for your grappling rolling days, is what he recommends. For someone who's not doing it for sport, they're doing it as a hobby to protect their family, which is still not, it's a serious hobby. I hate to call it a hobby. You're saying once a week where you
I'm saying that's what we do. If you love it, yeah, and if my guys love it, that are training just to protect their family, they'll pay more and they'll come 4 times a week. But what our normal curriculum of Hawaiian Kempo is, it's twice a week.
Right.
And then if they want to come more, they'll get better quicker, but they'll also spend more time and more money. And a lot of people who work 40-hour weeks don't have the time or the bandwidth to spend that much time training. So we try to pack in as much as we can in those 2 hours a week. But then some people, that's their hobby too. So they do an extra 2 or 3 days. I have guys that come in 6 days a week right now. They just love it. And they never want to fight in a cage. They just love it. And this is their passion.
So there you go, William. A minimum of twice a week or more. Or more if you have the time. Last few comments here because we're getting to the end of our time. It's been our 30 minutes. Yeah. Robert says hard sparring only for belt promotions and birthdays. Good one. Jimmy asks, please order more hoodies and t-shirts on Pit Monster. They've been sold out for 6 months and Christmas is coming. I want to get some Christmas gifts. All right,
tell that person first of all, ask him how he's trying to get the stuff, and then is he going to pitmonsterapparel.com, and if he is, then he's not getting through. Have him personally message me on Instagram, and I'll talk to him there about, since he is a listener, I can maybe talk my wife into mailing it to him if he's in the United States.
All right. So Jimmy, if you're listening still, contact us. Contact John at Pitmaster on Instagram directly if you're having a hard time getting it through Pit Monster Apparel. And Jimmy, and then
Pit_master.
If you're in the US, Pit Master. I've actually found
Pit_master.
Honestly, if I search John Hackleman on Instagram, Pit Master comes up, and
Okay.
It's pretty easy. So anybody who's confused,
John Hackleman. My name is John Hackleman.
Yeah, search John Hackleman on Instagram. He'll come up, and you can hit him up for t-shirts. All right, man.
What else we got? We good?
I think we're good.
We got a lot in. We got a lot in today, man.
All right. Oh, Jimmy said, "Thank you." I am. All right, brother. There you go.
No problem, brother. Thank you for tuning in, man.
Every week, Wednesday at 5:00 Pacific Standard Time. The Live Clean and Fight Dirty live.
We'll talk about animal instincts later, okay?
Animal instincts coming up soon. In the meantime, don't let anyone take your lunch money. Catch y'all later. All right. It's stopping. So I had a problem. The chats weren't coming through, so I had to go through live on the YouTube channel. I had to open an extra window to see what was happening. Oh wait, it still? It says it's okay. Wait, it's still. Hold on a second. We might still be live and now we're having a conversation on a live here.
Oh,
Hey.
hey.
Hey.